Hey everybody, this is Scott, and I thought I'd take the time to kind of make this quick tutorial video, kind of an introductory video to Ember-CLI and using the Ember, MVC framework that's becoming more and more popular. I've been using it for about a year professionally, and there's definitely a few things that when I first started doing it, I thought, was kind of confusing at first and didn't really make a sense coming from kind of an Angular world. I was working in kind of a .NET world before this. So I thought I'd make a quick video kind of going over basic file structure, what Ember-CLI is, what it does for us, and maybe create a quick app. A lot of the videos out there are using Ember 1.13 was definitely one of the most popular versions or longest running versions. I'm on 2.4 right now, so if we do Ember V, it's a little more up to date. There's a few things that are a little different. If I can think of something that's deprecated from 1.13 while we're going over this, I'll kind of point that out. And I thought I'd go over some of the ES6 stuff, that comes equipped with Babel, which is automatically going to be installed when we create a new app. So this is not necessarily a video of why you should use Ember. I'm betting if you're Googling Ember-CLI tutorials, you've kind of either already made that decision, or like me, that's just what your job required you to learn, so you just kind of had to learn it. So Ember-CLI is the command line interface that allows us to create Ember apps. It allows us to kind of skip a lot of the boilerplate code that you have to write every time you create a new route or a new component or a new template, what have you. It just allows you to quickly generate it from the command line, so you can kind of get to writing the actual stuff that's more meaningful. So we'll follow the instructions right here. We'll just install a new app. We'll call it tutorial app, and Ember's going to go through and generate a whole bunch of stuff for us. Cool. So that could take a couple minutes, kind of depending on how fast your computer is. You might hear your computer start heating up as it installs all these packages. But let's take a look quickly at kind of what it did here. So I'm going to open this up in Atom. Let me bring this over to this monitor. And this is kind of the basic file structure that you're going to see. So for the most part, you're going to do everything in the app directory. So that's kind of the MVC directory. You'll see there's a folder for controllers, a folder for models, routes, styles, where all your CSS is going to go. Templates are kind of like your views here. So pretty basic file structure. Then we have the config folder. That's where your environment your environment.js file is going to live. You'll see here there's actually some conditionals already for development. So that's, when we're testing this locally, we can have certain logic apply. When we run tests, we can have additional logic apply. I'm not really going to get into that too much now. Node modules, where your npm packages are going to be installed, and a few other things here. Again, I'm not going to go into a ton of detail on what particularly those are, just kind of going into basically how we can build a quick application. So if we just go into this directory really quick, we can actually run our application through Ember serve, or if you want to just alias it, you can do Ember-S if you want to save yourself a couple of keystrokes, and it will start running on localhost 4200. So if you'll go here, you'll see, hey, we got this cool welcome to Ember. That's what the application file renders by default. If for whatever reason you ever wanted to run it on a different port, Control-C quits out, Ember-S, you can run it on a different port, 55555. For whatever reason, maybe you're running two Ember apps at the same time. I actually do that at work, where we have kind of an in-house tool, and then the actual web app that looks out to the web, that our clients see. So sometimes we want to run both concurrently. So I'll just keep it on 4200, but just good to know that we can do that if we need to. So welcome to Ember. That's going to be probably one of the first questions you have. Where is it actually doing that? Well, let's just take a look here. We'll search for welcome to Ember, and you'll see it's rendered here in the application handlebars file. So this is what's rendered at the very, very high level. In the outlet is what render is essentially its children. So its children are going to be the individual routes that we'll create. So one of the first things that really tripped me up when I started going through a lot of tutorials versus what we were doing, in the actual application that I jumped into, was that all the handlebar files by default are stored in the templates file or templates folder. All the routes are in the routes folder, controllers in the controllers folder, but you'll see a lot of developers out there using what's called pod structure. And I kind of like pod structure a lot. A lot of people think it's going to become the default going forward. So rather than having all your templates live in one folder, we have folders based on routes. So for instance, if I want to have a blog route, rather than having, a blog handlebars file and a blog model and a blog route, it would all live in the blog directory. So in the blog directory is where we would find our route.js for that particular route, our template for that particular route, and additionally a controller if we needed to have one. Another thing that you'll definitely see a lot too as you're going through, because so much of the documentation is based on older versions, you move a lot of logic to the controller, and going forward that's really not something that's going to be used well as we're moving towards this routable components, and I can go over more details of that, although the upgrade path isn't 100% clear on what that's going to look like. But a lot of that logic that you see can either live in the route or live on the component level. And I'll go into more details on what components are specifically. So if we wanted to use pod structure, we can actually apply that to our whole application. Let me pull this up real quick. So if we go to our Ember-CLI file here, this is where we can actually set some things for our Ember-CLI application. One of the things that's automatically enabled is live reload. So that means anytime I make a change to a file and save it, the application is actually going to refresh. I really like having that, especially when you're working on smaller applications. It's nice to just see your changes reflected instantly. If you don't like that, you can go ahead and, I believe it's just live reload, and set it to false. So it's only going to update when you actually go and refresh your browser. But here we're going to use pods, and I'm going to set that to true. And this is going to apply to every time I generate something, but I'll show you how we can kind of opt out of that if you want to use what's called more of a hybrid approach, which is what I use. I think it makes more sense in a lot of aspects. But since we're doing this way, let's go ahead and delete some of these directories. So I'm going to delete my routes directory. I'm going to keep the models directory and delete the controllers directory. And let's start just generating some routes. So let me open a new tab here. So what I was talking about in the beginning is how we can use the command line to kind of skip a lot of that boilerplate. So let's say I want to add a new route to my directory. And again, a route is, a subdirectory essentially in your application. So let's say we wanted to create, a blog route. So we're going to say Ember generate, or just Ember-G if you want to do the shorthand. We're going to do a route, and we're going to call it blog. And you'll see Ember will go through and it'll generate that automatically. So you'll see here automatically puts it in the blog route.js and blog template. So that's that pod structure that I'm talking about, versus it going into the template directory and creating a blog handlebars file, and going in the route directory, creating a route.js file. I kind of like having all the logic of particular routes in one directory. I think it makes more sense. But if you don't like that, you can actually opt out of it. So let's say we accidentally name it something we didn't mean to name it. We can do Ember destroy route blog, and it's going to delete all that stuff they just created for us. And say we did want to do pod structure, we wanted to opt out of pod structure, Ember-G route blog pod. So -- pod is going to ignore whatever rule we've set on the use pod. So if you're not using pod, it's going to use it. If you are using pod, it's going to ignore it. So again, I like having the pod structure. So that's what we're going to do. So let's generate our blog route, and you'll see it'll also create tests automatically for you. So routes typically have unit tests, you can actually generate tests directly, generate route tests, and then specify what type you want. For routes, obviously, it's gonna always be unit. But if you wanted to create an integration test for like a component or an acceptance test, you can actually specify what type of test you want. So if we go over here and actually look at this blog directory, we have two things. We have the route file and the template file. So the outlet, I'm going to delete right now because we don't need that, but I'll show you how that's used in just a second. And Atom is really great because it highlights, what files have actually changed since the last time I've pushed my current branch, and it's highlighting the router file. So the router file is really what controls, what we can actually browse to. And you'll see it added. Again, Atom's highlighting which line is new here for me. It highlights that there is a blog route now. So by default, this .route is going to add a route called blog, and it's going to point it directly at the matching directory name. You can actually change this if you want to. You can actually specify a path. If I didn't want it to, I wanted it to live in a different directory, but I wanted it to be called something like my blog or whatever, then I can actually specify the path is going to be /blog. So it's going to go to the blog directory, but when I actually type it in to my browser, I'm going to type in my blog. And let's just do that real quick. Let's add an H2 here. This is the blog directory. Oops. And save it. So we'll come here. Here's my app, and if I go to /my blog, it completely fails because I did it backwards. There. So I had that ass backwards. So the first one is the actual directory, and the second one is the path. The path is actually going to be rendered in the URL. So just goes to show you, I've been doing this for a year and I still make a bunch of dumb mistakes like that. So again, the application is always going to be rendered at the highest level, and in its outlet, it's rendering our directory, our route. So here, I actually don't want to do this. We'll keep it pretty basic. We'll go back to blog, and you'll see this is, again, here's that live reload. It automatically reloaded this for me because the app's so small. It's going to do it really quickly. But here, let's go to this kind of default structure here. So if I wanted to come here, I can change this. No, this is just a tutorial. And you can actually add like a footer here too. That's what you'll see most people doing. This is a simple example. This is a simple example of an Ember app. And we'll close out our footer. And I meant to close this out too. So again, we come here, and here's my footer. So usually you would have your navigation up here, your footer down here, and you're going to rest assured that you're always going to have those present no matter where people are. It's kind of the benefit of a single page application. We're not re-rendering this stuff as we move from route to route. It's only going to render the stuff that it needs to, i.e. the stuff in the actual outlet. So, the next thing that we can kind of jump into is, what is the route directory actually, what does the route file actually do for us? So the route typically is what loads in our model. So if you want to use models in Ember, you're most likely going to use Ember Data. And I know certainly not everybody uses Ember Data. I actually haven't really met anyone that uses Ember and doesn't use Ember Data. I feel like it's kind of the advantage of using Ember versus other MVC frameworks. And what Ember Data does is just communicates our data from our our backend or our API, wherever that data is coming from, and kind of normalizes it so that we can use it in the same way over and over and over again in our applications. So I usually store all of my models in the models directory. So that's not pod structure. So when I want to generate a pod, or excuse me, when I want to generate a model, let's say, post would be like a blog post, right? I usually specify pod for this specifically. And the reason for that is because I don't think it makes sense to store the blog model in like the blog directory, right? Because it can actually be used by other routes. So it's a little misleading to have it all live in one directory or one routes directory, because a lot of routes can actually access it. So models, I actually like to have all in the models directory. That's that kind of hybrid approach. And you'll actually see a lot of people using this kind of file structure where their routes are in the route folder, but things like models, serializers, and adapters are going to be in the model, serializers, and adapters directory, because they're actually used by tons of routes. They're not really exclusive to whatever route you're on at that time. So let's take a look at what this created for us. So it imports DS from Ember data. And if you looked at this file, you'll notice it imports Ember from Ember. So Ember is different than Ember data. So certainly remember that there's certain methods that are available from one and not the other. And when we create a model, think of it like we're creating kind of a schema for a database, right? So an Ember model can have things like relationships. It has certain attributes that we need to assign. It can have a has many relationship. It can have a belongs to relationship if it's dependent on another one. And that's what we want to specify. And this is really nice because you might have an API that's returning a ton of stuff. Maybe we only want certain things, so we can kind of restrict what information is coming to us through this. So one of those things that ES6 does for us is allows us to do destructuring. So when you start looking at some examples, you're going to see a lot of people will, they'll have like name, for instance, is a DS attribute that is a string. Right, so this is going to give all of our posts that we pull in from our API or whatever it is a name, and that name is going to be a string. So we're specifying that here. Maybe title is probably more descriptive. Then we have like an author. Oops, could help if I could spell. DS adder string. So when you start getting these really big models where you have dozens and dozens upon all these different adders, you might want to save a few keystrokes. So this is when this destructuring thing comes in for us. So what destructuring does is if we have an object, object equals test1 and item, which is 2, but I want to access test and item directly, I can actually say, oops, item equals object. So it's actually going to, because I put it in this hash here, it's going to create new variables called test and item from this object here. And the reason we do this is you're going to see a lot of people will say const adder and model equals DS. So they import DS from Ember data, and because we're already importing it, we don't have to say this anymore. We don't have to say model. We don't have to say ds.adder. So again, it's just going to save us a little bit of code and make it a little bit more readable. Similarly here, when we're importing from Ember, we can do const route equals Ember. And I'm going to use this a lot. It's the way I'm used to writing things now. And again, it's all about just kind of saving some keystrokes, especially when you write things like computed properties. You're going to write a ton of them, and it can be really exhausting to write ember.computed.greater-than, ember.computed.alias, when really you could just write that once up here, destructure it, and then, again, make it more readable. When somebody comes and looks at it, they'll instantly know, this is a computed property, this is an alias, they're not really going to have to go through, well, what's this Ember internal thing? Should I look this up? It's a little more idiomatic in that sense. So here we have our model. It has a title and it has an author. I'm not going to go into too much detail right now about like how we can populate this data. I was going to do a part 2 to this when we can pull in information from an actual API. But for now, let's work with creating a record of a blog post with a title and an author, and probably should have some content or something. So again, content is a string. If you're wondering what other types of structures there are, let's look up Ember data adder and see what attributes that they have. String, number, boolean, and date. So if you're wondering what other ones you can bring in, those are the ones by default. They're called transforms, and you actually can create your own transforms. Ember generate transform. The most common one I've seen people use is object. So if you're working with like a Postgres database that actually returns JSON, you can create a transform that essentially tells you, this is how we read this type of transform that's coming to us. You can also set specific strings. Maybe you want to set some logic that does like a regex against strings, like email. You can create your own adder called email. So that can add kind of this level of validation. And you'll see here too, you can set default values for things as well. So default value false, usually with booleans you'll want to do that. Strings, you can actually pre-populate fields if you want to. So if we don't get any data back, we want to apply a default value. So how does this actually apply to what we're doing here? So when we create a new route, we want to create a model. So again, implying kind of this ES6 structure, you would normally see like new function, is a function, right? And it does a bunch of stuff. Again, it's about saving keystrokes. You can do it simply like that now. It's really cool. I like it. Again, makes it more easy to read. And one of the things that the Ember route class has by default is the model hook. So the model is what's going to be accessible on our route by default. So the way we access the Ember data store is this .store. It's going to be accessible everywhere in our application. So the store is what stores all of our models. And it doesn't literally store all of the data. It will store it if you've ever loaded it, which is nice as we move between routes. If we ever need to access maybe the same blog post, Ember is going to be smart enough not to load that information a bunch of times, unless you specifically tell it to unload that data because we don't need it anymore. So what we want to do here is we want to create a record. So again, I'm going to go over how we can pull data in from outside sources, but for right now, let's just deal with creating new information here. So create record takes 2 parameters. First, it needs to know what type of record we want to create. In this case, we want to create a post with this information. So title, author, and content. And the second thing it takes is a hash with those attributes. So we want a title, and it's just going to be a string, tutorial, blog post. We want an author. Let's call it this guy. And we want some content, right? And we'll put in default content for right now. And we'll use a semicolon to load. And we actually want to return this. So we want our model to return something. That way it's accessible in our actual template. So let's go back here. So again, we're on our blog directory. Let's bring up our console. Make sure that we're not getting any errors here, and I'll just kind of squish this over this side of the screen. So now that we have a title, an author, and some content here, let's actually make that stuff accessible. So H3, I want to render my title here. and we can do model.title. Tutorial blog post. So there's that record that we created. It's in our store right now. Now this isn't going to persist if I make changes to this, because I'm not literally storing the data. It's kind of like storing in memory. Usually you would have some sort of backend that would take a request to actually save it to your database, whatever. So this is what we call like an uncommitted record. It's not committed to anything, but it is accessible in our store, and therefore it's going to be accessible on other routes, not just this particular route, which is kind of nice. And maybe we'll have the author here, and we'll say by, you know, model.author. And this is kind of that HTML bars structure if you're not familiar with this. You know, tons and tons of videos out there where you can kind of look that up. And ERP, we're going to have our model.content. So this is our content. And if we switch back to our app here, this is the blog directory, tutorial blog post by this guy. There's our default content. So again, we created a record from Ember data. We're rendering it on our page. Automatically reloaded. It's really, really fast. So let's say we want to take this a step further. We actually want to edit this information, which is probably what, you know, is really important for a lot of people out there. We want to show you how we can kind of bind this and update it live, reflect things immediately. So we're going to create a new input here of type text, and its value is going to be model.title, right? And we'll do label for title. And we'll end this right here, so we'll say like edit title. So edit title, it's already pre-populated with my tutorial blog post, but I want to change that. And you'll see, again, it's rendered in real time right there. It's that two-way binding that some people love and some people hate. It can get you in trouble really easily, but that's one of the really nice things. Is this is all going to be rendered in real time for us, and we don't have to, you know, put in extra logic. We don't have to use jQuery to grab this stuff and tell it to update some ID elsewhere. You know, this is completely marked down. I'm not using any special classes or anything like that. So let's edit this content, or edit additional content rather. So now we want to edit the author, model.author, and edit the content, and this would probably make more sense as a text area, right? So this guy, I can delete it. No, this person. And then we're gonna have some really long blog posts. And again, getting rendered in real time. There's I probably should have applied some styles to this, but again, if you're kind of checking this video out, I'm making the assumption that you know some basic CSS, not necessarily why you're looking this up. If you want to pull in Bootstrap, you can actually import that right into your Bower components, right into your app, and most of the tutorial videos actually go over that. So if you want to just pull in some default styles, definitely feel free to. If you want to write your own CSS, you know, it's all kind of implied here. You know, let's maybe add a different default height of like 20 pixels. And we'll give them a width of 100%. Let's make them span the whole page, right? There. Again, that auto update applies to our styles now too. It's one of the cooler things in Ember 2.4. It wasn't available in older versions, but we can definitely do that now. So the next thing we want to do is I want to show you how we can generate subroutes within our directory. So let's Ember generate a route And now it's going to be blog slash, author. Maybe we have specific information about a particular author. Let's generate that. And you'll see automatically adds the author directory. If we go back to our router here, it extends this function now for us, which was really cool. Did that automatically and added the author. Cool. So this is going to live at our domain /blog/author, and this is where we're going to say another header here. This is additional information about this particular author. And then I'm just going to grab some lorem ipsum text. All right, cool. So let me close a bunch of these tabs here. And now if we go to this /author, nothing happens. So the reason nothing happens is because, much like the application, which lives at the highest level, is kind of like our parent to all parents, we're going to render the parent route first. So we're going to render the template file that lives in our parent directory, the blog directory, is going to be rendered first. Then we render any subdirectories in our outlet. So that might not be, this structure here might not actually be what I want. Maybe I actually want this information to live at my, like a edit subroute. So let's Ember generate route blog/edit. So now we have that edit directory. Again, if we open, our router, we'll see we have this edit subroute. So let's cut and paste this. We'll save here, and in this template, we'll paste it. So we're at the blog/author, right? It is rendering our lorem ipsum text. But if I want to edit this blog post, I go to the edit subdirectory. Here's all that content. I can, start editing. So what if there's something we want to render at just /blog, but we don't want it to apply to every subroute thereafter? Well, that's the index route. So let's go to our index route, which is now generated. I don't want this to have an outlet, but just to show you, you can have subroutes within subroutes within subroutes. So the index route could even have subroutes within it. The edit route could have subroutes within it. So we can kind of keep going as far down as you want. Just kind of keep that in mind. But here we're going to have, another paragraph that's, some additional information about this particular post, which again is model.title. So this should only be accessible. We should only see this when we're at /blog. As soon as we go to /edit, we're going to see the actual editing stuff. And now this is the new title that is totally different. So how do we get this information to persist from one route to the other? So I want to make that edit on my edit route, and I want to see it on the index route, right? I want to see that title have changed. So we can actually do what's called a transition. So when we use the browser to refresh a page, it's going to unload everything and reload everything. And if I want to transition quickly from one thing to another within the app and kind of persist this information down, that's when we would use a transition. And this is what gets into what you would call actions. And we're going to kind of talk on this lightly. Actions are really this big rabbit hole you can jump down. They can do a lot of really cool things. But here we're just going to go over transitioning from one thing to another. So one of the first things you'll notice in this route file is I didn't load in that, I didn't create a record here. So all child routes by default are going to have access to its parent model unless you specify otherwise. So I can actually come in here and pull in a completely different model if I wanted to, but I don't. And also, if you aren't doing this, you can actually safely just delete the route file. So the index directory is never going to need its own route. It's going to depend on its parent route for its model. And because of that, I can just delete that, because otherwise it's just going to extend the route class but not do anything, so it's useless to us. But here I actually want to add something. I want to add an actions, and all actions are going to live in the actions hash, and you're going to see this in routes, you're going to see this in controllers, you're going to see this in components. So here we can actually create functions that are accessible on our template. So this action is going to be, go back to index, right? And we're going to this dot transition to blog dot index. So how do we actually call this action? Well, it could be something really simple. We could literally just have a button that has an action on it. This should be in quotes. Click to go back. So this is on the edit route. Oops. So if we go to the edit route, we see a button, go back, bam, we're back there. We click back. Now if we edit this and we go back, because we transitioned, our data's persisted, right? So I edited the title, and because I used that transition to, Ember stores it in the actual history. So using the actual back button, the browser now is going to apply this single page application logic and bring me back to the last route I was on. So the reason it wasn't working before is because I was actually going up here and typing the URL in. That's my way of telling the browser unload this information and reload it. Now, because we're transitioning within the actual application itself, that information has persisted. So once again, a new title, and we go through here, once again a new title. But if I go in here and type in /edit, it's gonna unload and reload, right? So it's gonna hit that model hook again, it's gonna create the new record. I didn't persist that, I didn't save that record because I have nowhere to save it right now, and just deleted it. Cool. So one of the other things that you're gonna see a lot in a lot of applications is this SetUpController hook, right? So SetUpController does exactly what you think it does. It sets up the controller. So you might be saying, well, I don't actually need the controller because we're moving away from controllers, we're using routable components, and that's true, but this is a hook that's called automatically anyway. It's what makes the model accessible on your template. And what you might want to do is not call that thing model, right? So that's one of the most common ways you're going to see this called. So SetUpController takes two parameters, controller and model, whatever is returned here. And you'll see some people will call this hash or something else. It's still calling what's returned by this. And the reason people use hash is maybe they're returning more than one thing from their store. They're returning a hash of things, so not just posts. Maybe author is a completely different model than they want to return. They want to return information from Yahoo Finance, whatever. They're returning a ton of stuff. They're returning a hash of models. So what we want to do here is we want to set a new thing called posts, right? I don't want to call it model because it's confusing. I'm gonna again get back to, let's write code that people are gonna understand. Model.title doesn't make sense, but post.title might instantly make sense to them. So we're gonna Ember set. So we're gonna use the set method, similar to this .set, but this is kind of the way that is going to be more supported. So we're going to set something on our controller. we're going to set a property called post, and it's going to be set to model. And again, getting to that destructuring thing. So we can import set here, make this a little more readable, much cleaner. We're writing less code, we're doing the same thing. So controller set post dot model. So when I come here now, let's change all these models to posts, right? I keep trying to click there, it's not working, so let's make it a little bit wider. So again, it's rendering all this stuff correctly. Now it's rendering the other information because technically the model is still accessible by the name model, right? But let's just go in and change that here. Posts, save that, and then post here too. But you'll see in the edit, it doesn't actually do that. So post is not bound here because the subroute does have its own controller. So if I want to change the name of my model to something else, to post, and I want that to be accessible elsewhere, I'm going to have another SetUpController hook. So in this editing post here, again, I'm going to have to do SetUpController, controller model. I don't have to do the model hook, right, because it's inheriting it from its parent. But let's set controller post top model. And because I want to access set in the same way, const, let's import route since we're doing this anyway from Ember. And if you're not familiar with const, I kind of just made that assumption. So in ES6, you have, instead of var x equals some number, you have two things accessible to you. Const x equals 4. And a const is a constant. I can't update this. So x equals 3, right? And then if I console log x, it's going to give me 4, right? Because I can't update it. So if you want a variable that can be updated, you use let instead of const. So a little quick ES6 formatting for you. So SetUpController, again, we're doing the same exact thing on this route. And now we have access to posts. However, if we go to the index route, you'll see the title isn't here. So if I want to do that same thing here, I would actually have to create that route file and do the same SetUpController hook. So it's not going to inherit that controller for us automatically. You can import controllers directly. There is a controller for hook. This is much easier, especially since we're doing something so simple. And another thing too, if you ever want to just look up what a particular method does, I mean, the thing to remember is Ember, it really is just JavaScript. So sometimes if I'm really confused, I will actually look up what something does. So SetUpController, I know, is a function, and yeah, it's not going to use that ES6 format because it's importing Babel as part of the Ember-CLI package. So you're going to see more typical JavaScript here, and it lives in the Bower components file or folder under Ember. So I want it in the Ember JS file. So you see 27,000 lines. This is what it imports on every single page. And you can kind of get a breakdown of what it's actually doing. And you can add debuggers in here and stuff too. I've done that a ton of times if I really want to see how information's moving through. So kind of read through this. You'll see, it was doing what we thought it did. It was setting up our model automatically, right? It was setting controller model to the context that's passed to it. We overwrote that, right? So we are doing this same thing, except we're saying set post to the context, in this case, our model. So, if you're ever confused, really don't be afraid to come and just, Command-Shift-F and search for something in the Ember.js directory. Again, it's all JavaScript. If you're watching this video, you probably understand basic JavaScript and you can kind of figure it out. A lot of the documentation's pretty good here. It's tough sometimes to Google this information because so much of it becomes deprecated as we move from version to version. You'll see so many tutorials and popular blog posts, but they were written, 3 or 4 years ago, so they might not necessarily be applicable anymore. So that's why sometimes I just jump right into the code base that you have. You're getting the right information. So Ember is in the Bower components. If you ever want to see something for Ember data, like normalize response is one I recently looked up, and I'm going to go over that in a lot more detail in a future video, but that's going to be in our node modules. I think it's just Ember data. Yeah, so we can actually look that up directly as a function too, right? No, maybe not. Maybe I made that up. Yeah. So again, we can look it up in the serializer folder. I think it's actually this. So we can see what this does. So Ember data. So again, that's the thing that loads in our data, right? Our models files is going to be in the node modules. So everything else is going to be in our Bower components. So again, not that hard. Don't be intimidated to look things up. Don't be intimidated to ask on forums. I joined the Ember Slack channel. It's really, really helpful. A lot of really smart people on there. A lot of people that contribute to this framework are up there and are answering questions. So they definitely want to encourage people, to start using Ember more often, learn that, etc. Feel free to jump in. So in terms of actions, again, accessible on our route. This can do a lot more here. You could have set certain properties here. I want to show you one more action, and it's for toggling a property. So let's say we want to have something that we can disable or enable really easily. So I want to set something else on my controller. I want to set controller editable. Is that even a word? I want to set it to false by default, right? So let me get rid of this menu here. So I want to add another action here. Toggle edit. Oops. And these can take parameters. But here I'm going to toggle property. And I believe I'm going to have to get the controller. I'm double checking this real quick. So we want to toggle this editable property. We're going to have to get this controller.editable. So we can't just say get this editable, because editable is a property set on our controller, not on our route. And again, the controller is what controls what is accessible on our template, right? So let's just save this. In our app loads, that's great. If I did something like really weird, let's say I forgot this comma, you're gonna get a build error. So Ember's great because it just fails so quickly. And I'm also importing get. I should have probably gotten an error here that, get was not defined. So that actually wasn't going to do anything. So another thing, if you want to leave this up, that live reload is going to tell you when you do stuff that doesn't make any sense. So because I hadn't imported get yet from Ember, that wasn't going to do anything. So again, this is just ember.get, much like ember.set. So let's save that. So now we have toggle edit, right? So actually let's set editable to true, because I want to wrap this in an if. If editable. Let's indent this and end that if. So again, that's kind of HTML bars. If editable, we're going to render it, and we're going to go to the /edit. So great, cool. We're it's editable, that's why we're on this route, but I want to disable that. Let's add another button. Action, what did I call this? ToggleEdit. And we'll call it ToggleEdit, right? And I'll show you again how we can kind of change that stuff inline to control this text. We can make that text dynamic. So ToggleEdit, the key provided to get must be a string. You passed true. Interesting. So yeah, rather than getting this controller, I forgot we don't want to fetch the controller. The controller is already accessible as part of this. So again, I make a ton of mistakes, but that's all right. You can fix them really quickly, and Ember is really great because it's such an opinionated framework at kind of telling you why you messed up. So again, we're just going to toggle this property on and off. Cool, right? So if we go back to this template, maybe I actually want this text to show two different things, right? So if editable, I want it to be disable, right? And otherwise, I want it to be enable. Disable, enable, disable, enable. So an inline if, again, bound to that property, really, really quick and simple to use. So that's kind of actions right now in a nutshell. You can set actions on inputs as well, and you can actually specify when they happen. So like, let's wrap this in a div. Indent you, whoops, indent you, and this is going to have an action called, you know, something, and I'm just going to make a something action here. We'll just make it a log. Hit this. So action something, but I want it to happen on, you know, focus out. Hit this, right? I want it to happen on, I think key up is another one. Hit this, so it hits when I keys, no longer doing when I focus out. I think change, I think it changes the default, maybe. So maybe it does this every time I, no, it seems like focus in is the default. I think you can do, yeah, I have to do on change to grab every input. Maybe not. I can't remember. Either way, you can bind actions really to anything. If it's on this wrapper, you can have it apply to everything within it. So it's going to apply, if I had a bunch of inputs and I had action something on key up, it's going to apply to key up on all of those inputs. That might be a way you want to do some like data cleaning, apply it to a bunch of different things, you know, really simple to do. So, you know, again, to go over really the file structure here, that's really the most important things. We use the command line to generate our routes. Our routes are what's, you know, rendered on the page. The route file brings in the model. The controller controls what's displayed on our template, so it's never going to be accessible unless we have a controller. Pod structure is what keeps everything from the blog directory, or for the blog route in the blog directory. So the route, the template, and the controller file. So again, you can create controllers. Ember generate controller, blog/author. You should throw it in there for me automatically. So like this, oh, whoops, I wanted to do that for the edit directory. So here I had editable true, right? Let's actually set it here. Editable, true, right? So maybe I want to control things here. So that property is still accessible. So I'm not setting it in my controller. I actually have the controller file directly. These are, again, being deprecated, so I wouldn't get too married to doing a lot of things in the controller, but you're going to see it done a lot anyway, just because some of the documentation or some blog posts and stuff is kind of old. So don't be afraid to just throw things in the controller just to get things working, and then when you have a better understanding, move that logic out. You can have actions that live in the controller as well, so I wouldn't have to do, you know, this dot controller toggle property. I could just do this dot toggle property editable, and it would do that for us. So you would create the same actions hash in the controller. Really, really simple. So again, everything in the blog route and all child routes are within the blog directory. All child routes have access by default to its parent's model, but not its parent's controller, because the controller is just going to be specific to that template. That's the pod structure. I ignore pod structure when I create my models. You don't have to do that, but it would create a post directory with a model.js file. And if I ever created a post route, that would be there too. So again, I kind of do that hybrid approach, pod structure for routes, and for models, adapters, serializers, things that might be accessed by a ton of different pages on my site. I ignore that pod structure because I like to have them all live in one place. The router file is actually what controls our particular routes. Ember-CLI file that we edited is where you can add things like live reload. You can disable that. That's where you can access the pod's structure. Application handlebars file is what's rendered, you know, at the top of our app. So that's where, you know, this lives and our footer lives. Styles obvious. Routes I didn't actually use. I can actually delete that safely. And the nice thing with Ember, the Ember resolver is what kind of tells the application where to look for things. It is smart enough to know when to use pod structure and when not to. So feel free to like mix and match. It's really not that big of a deal. It is smart enough to do that. So that's kind of just the introductory video. In my next video, I want to go over how we can pull information in from an API, how we can send requests, push requests, update records, which is, I think, probably the big reason you use something like Ember versus, you know, a much faster or easier to learn MVC framework. I think Ember has kind of a steep learning curve, but once you get going, it all kind of falls into place. So feel free to leave any comments if you have any questions. If you saw me doing something that didn't make sense, definitely let me know. If you see something that's deprecated, definitely let me know. Odds are, if you're watching this video, you know, a few months after I recorded this, some new version's out, and what I'm doing is not the right way to do it. Thanks for watching.